You ask the average Ninja Turtles fan what their thoughts are on the 2007 animated TMNT movie from Imagi Studios, the general consensus is that the film is underrated. However, if you engage with more hardcore fans, the opinions tend to waver from it being one of the best Ninja Turtles movie ever made to one of the worst. Over the years, my personal opinion on this movie has swayed back and forth, but in today's video, I really want to dive deeper into the topic of it being underrated. And if you're curious about how true or false I believe that statement is, I hope you'll walk with me. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. This is not my favorite Ninja Turtles movie. Out of all 10 feature-length Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films that exist, I have TMNT 2007 ranked 8th, right above TMNT 3 and Platinum Dune's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and below Out of the Shadows. And even after rewatching it for this movie, I'm still feeling really solid on that take. However, in my opinion, I also believe that on paper, this movie did nearly everything right. So it's very fascinating how middle of the road it wound up performing. With all my bias out in the open, I think I can give this movie a fair shake with the parts that go overlooked. Because looking back, this film does have a lot more going on with it than meets the eye. Now, I've split my two main talking points about this film into the production side and the story side. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the production side first, and this is your chance to grab a snack, your favorite beverage, and to hit the like button and subscribe so that way you don't forget. Because we're getting ready to dive in, and here we go. How underrated is TMNT 2007 really? TMNT 2007 was animated by the now defunct Imagi Studios and distributed by Warner Brothers. Which brings up my first thought which makes this film underrated. This film from 2007 was the first animated Ninja Turtles movie? Let that really sink in. With this brand's level of popularity in animation, that feels so wrong to say. Between the undeniable aura of the 1987 series and the popularity that was earned in the 2003 series, this was long overdue. And that's not a knock to the 90s trilogy by any means, however, technology was not on their side. But the lack of resources did, however, drive up the creativity tenfold. And I'm getting way off topic here, but my point of emphasis is that it should not have taken 20 years post 1987 for us to get our first animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. That's crazy. Anyways, moving on. While we're talking about animation, let's talk about the voice actors. I can't continue to discuss the production of this movie without bringing up the main cast. In my opinion, this is the most underrated aspect of the film. Why? Well, for starters, the principal leads, that being the Turtles and Splinter, were all voiced by professional voiceover artists, including Nolan North as Raphael, James Arnold Taylor as Leonardo, Mike Kelly as Michelangelo, and Mitchell Whitfield as Donatello. Voiceover veteran Mako Iwamatsu, most famously known for his work on Samurai Jack and Avatar: The Last Airbender, voiced Master Splinter, may he rest in peace. What makes this underrated to me? With the use of voiceover artists, the characters are allowed to find their own identity, which in retrospect was indubitably necessary for a reboot of this caliber. And it's something you can only fully appreciate years later down the road. But I'm not done talking about the cast. Yes, the voiceover artists nailed it, but the celebrity actors that they hired to do the supporting cast roles also deserve their flowers. In my opinion, TMNT 2007 went above and beyond with the supporting cast. How? They didn't just hire anyone. They hired character actors. April O'Neil was voiced by Sarah Michelle Gellar, whose resume was already stacked with credits like being Daphne in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and a personal favorite of mine, Cruel Intentions. Gellar undoubtedly was one of the biggest stars from her era, and I think it's safe to say that she did not need the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to help elevate her career. However, an actress with her level of range and dedication to the role is incredibly underrated in my opinion. And the buck doesn't stop there. Did you know that for the role of April O'Neil's main squeeze, Casey Jones, TMNT 2007 casted Chris Evans? I'm not even trying to retroactively gas up this version of Casey, just because Evans is now one of the GOATs of comic book actors. But considering the fact that in 2007 his anticipated Fantastic Four sequel would come out only 3 months after TMNT, it was obvious this guy was a rising star. On top of that, Chris Evans is a comic book guy, and I love the fact that an actor that understands what it takes to translate a character from a comic book medium to an acting medium voiced one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. Excuse me for being a fan. Speaking of comic book guys, do you know who else was casted in this movie? The film's main antagonist, Max Winter / Yaddle, was voiced by the Sir Patrick Stewart. arguably the biggest name on this cast call sheet, second only to Lawrence Fishburne, who did the opening narration. And if you don't know how big of a comic book guy Lawrence Fishburne is, you need to Google it. I also just realized while editing this script, Fishburne, like Chris Evans, would also be featured in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. It's a small world in Hollywood and only seems to be getting smaller. Another small role for a comic book guy worth mentioning is Kevin Smith, who voices the greasy diner cook. And the last notable voiceover artist that I want to mention is Kevin Michael Richardson, the voice of General Aguila, who would later go on to voice the Shredder in the 2012 Ninja Turtle series. And in my opinion, this is the greatest cast that could have possibly been assembled for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, and probably ever will be. The combination of voiceover artists and celebrity talent of the time was perfect. And when I listen back to the lines of dialogue from this movie, I am hearing the actual characters from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'm not just hearing a famous person that I'm already slightly aware of in the public eye doing their best impersonation in Ninja Turtles cosplay. You know what I mean? I was actually so impressed by this movie that I was compelled to read the film credits just so that way I can mention the casting director by name. So, to Don Hershey. As an audio engineer, I understand that a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff often goes overlooked and unthanked when working on productions like this. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, for the work that you did on that one movie about talking turtles from nearly over 20 years ago, I just want to say thank you.
This shit means something to me, man.
So if you've made it this far into the video, first of all, thank you, I appreciate it. Second of all, you've heard me bring up this term comic book guy a couple of times now, and I've given you the brief explanation of it meaning to me a person that understands how to take a character from the medium of comic books and figure out how to translate them into the medium of TV and film. So I just want to also highlight and preface the fact that this film literally had TMNT co-creator Peter Laird as a creative consultant on this film. And it's very underrated to me that you have one of the two original TMNT guys in terms of also all of these other comic book people that were working on this film, and yet somehow, some way, talking about this film story at times can still be very disappointing. And before I go on any further, I do think that it's important for me to mention that, yes, now I am aware that back then when this film was, out and, being promoted, that it was intended to be a direct sequel to the live-action 90s films. However, I don't think it did that great of a job really executing that. Because, if a lifetime Ninja Turtles fan like me can be completely oblivious to that until years later down the road watching the DVD extras with interviews from director Kevin Munro and such, then yeah, I really feel like this movie does miss the mark in terms of what it's actually trying to do. But I also just want to highlight that I'm not here to change your minds about whether or not if you like or dislike this movie. I'm here for, the healthy discourse. And with all that, go ahead and please leave a like on this video if you've made it this far, because once again, I do appreciate it. And yeah, let's go ahead and really lock in talking about this film's story. On its best day, I find this movie's plot harmlessly mid, but for an experienced Ninja Turtles fan, you start noticing things are off in this movie from the jump. The first 40 seconds of this movie are spent very briefly describing the Turtles. Following that, you get an exposition dump that's less than 2 minutes long that explains the Stone Generals, the Stars of Keegan, and the 13 Monsters. And in my honest opinion, if you don't care about what's happening by the time you get through all of that, you should find something else to do with your time besides watching this movie. You might think this is small potatoes to nitpick, but in a movie that's less than 90 minutes long, you need to make your time count when telling the story. For me, pacing is what separates the upper tier of TMNT movies from the bottom tier. The next two TMNT movies closest to this film in runtime are Batman vs. TMNT and The Rise of the TMNT movie. Both of these films are tied for the shortest runtime in the franchise, and watching either one of those movies compared to TMNT 2007 is a night and day difference. But comparing this movie to a couple of the greatest films in the franchise is a bit harsh. So to compare it to another Ninja Turtles movie that I find mid, even Secret of the Ooze has its pacing issues. But at an hour and 28 minutes, the story that movie tells is way easier to follow in my opinion. Stuff like this matters when you have criticisms of not liking the story. Pacing issues aside though, my biggest issue with this movie is that the main villain has no pre-established connection to the Ninja Turtles. And this is where my biggest rant about TMNT 2007 is about to begin. So, brace yourself. Karai should have been the main villain of TMNT 2007, and I can prove it, just walk with me. I think that I should be able to trust most of you watching this video to know who Karai is, but just in case, she is a character from the original Mirage comics, most famously known for being the daughter of the Shredder. I was hip to who Karai was and how cool she is because of the 2003 Ninja Turtle series. She made her first ever on-screen debut in the 03 series 3 years and 10 days before this film's release. As a kid, I instantly fell in love with Karai because she's badass. She appeared in 25 episodes of the show, so roughly just shy of a fifth, give or take, mainly in seasons 2, 3, and 4. You know, the seasons that would have regularly been airing new episodes during this time leading up to TMNT 2007's release. What happened? By season 4 of the 2003 series, they were setting Karai up to be the new Shredder. She also had a minor reoccurring role in Volume 4 at this time in the Mirage comics. And I bring this up because I want to annotate that if you were into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles media at this time, you knew who Karai was and how important she is to the Foot Clan. I bring that up because TMNT 2007 couldn't even make it past 3 minutes in its own opening narration without bringing up the Shredder in a halfway attempt to connect that movie to the live-action 90s films. I bring that up because the 90s live-action Ninja Turtles films were heavily adapted and inspired by the Mirage comics at the time, which would eventually go on to introduce Karai anyway. You see how this is all connected and it all circles back to Karai? All signs pointed to Karai being the main villain from a brand synergy standpoint, but they just didn't pull the trigger. Let's not forget, this is our first time ever getting Karai in a Ninja Turtles movie. Oroku Karai, daughter of the Shredder, Chunin of the Foot Clan, sole heir to the throne, was relegated to the role of Errand Girl for her cinematic big screen debut. How do you miss that easy of an open layup? This movie should have been the rocket strapped to Karai's back that launched her to the A tier of relevant TMNT characters with agency. And now fast forward to 2025 and onward, and you see how that one choice has completely changed the trajectory of her career in terms of how important she is and how she is brought back up in contemporary Ninja Turtles media. To this day, I stand by my belief that she should have been the primary antagonist of TMNT 2007. The choice that they went with wasn't the greatest in my opinion, and I would go further, but honestly I think the topic of Karai deserving better in the present era deserves its own video. For me, this was the one choice that I think most negatively impacted TMNT 2007. I respect the movie for trying something original, but time has shown that that choice was more of an uphill battle than this movie was ready to fight. For what this movie is, it's very dark, but not in a thrilling way. There's no real feeling that there's any real danger because the stakes just aren't that personal enough for the Turtles in relation to the main villain. Ninja Turtles historically has made it poignant to emphasize that the Turtles' destiny is forever tied to the villain's motives and actions, even going as far as to outright say, without their villains being as evil as they are, they wouldn't exist. Personal stakes get us as the audience emotionally invested. To be fair, you do get those personal stakes in the story, just not with Max Winters and the 13 Monsters. Stuff just kind of happens, and then the Turtles save the day. If that's all you need to be satisfied with your Ninja Turtles content, good for you, and I mean that sincerely. As for the rest of us, I think we were just whelmed. But even with all that in mind, TMNT 2007 is still watchable because of another key aspect that is very underrated to me, the character writing. This movie is for the people that appreciate nuanced and flawed characters. Yes, there is a clear side to who are the protagonists and who are the antagonists, but interpersonally speaking, everything that these characters go through in this film isn't appreciated enough in terms of their development. So let me go ahead and talk about that one scene. No, the Raphael vs. Leonardo fight scene is not overrated. No, the Raphael vs. Leonardo fight scene is not underrated. It is the best paced and well-written aspect of this movie, and it serves as the perfect slow burn for the Act 2 climax, and Raphael's turning point as the main character of the movie. Fans bringing this up as the first thing they think about when it comes to speaking this movie's praises just speaks to how great that moment actually is. Me personally, I consider it top 3 all time in the franchise. Yes, this moment between them is that good. Yes, the rest of the movie surrounding it is that mid. Is everyone satisfied? As for the rest of the character moments, they're also good, but they're just not the emphasis of the focus like the Raph versus Leo stuff is. So let me try and pull, a few moments off the top of my head that I can think about that are just as good in terms of the characterizations of how they depict these characters, but let's go ahead and, give them their moment to shine. The first one that I want to bring to everyone's attention is when April finally catches up with Leo in Central America, and she's bringing him up to speed about what his brothers have been up to, and Leonardo immediately clocks Raphael's behavior and immediately goes into parent mode, asking, well, if Raph is sleeping all day, then what's he doing all night? This to me is peak Leonardo is the mom of the group behavior, and I absolutely love that for him in terms of his characterization. A lot of people are not fond of this depiction of Leo, and I feel like him being unlikable was an intentional thing, you know what I mean? And so people kind of get lost in this house and be like, oh, this is just a bad version of Leo. It's like, no, he's flawed, but there's certain things about him that are tried and true to Leonardo on his best and on his worst day. You understand what I'm saying? Another one that I want to bring up is Casey Jones's face immediately going from excited to disappointed when April tells him that he found Leo, but he did not come back with her. And when it comes to this aspect, Casey Jones is really representing the entirety of the Hamato clan in that moment, because yeah, they're warriors first, and if there's no more battles left to fight, there's definitely something missing in all of them when it comes to, finding their purpose. That's why, everybody's kind of so disjointed and discombobulated at the beginning in Act 1 of the film, doing all these various odd jobs and trying to, be regular civilians when that's not the case. They're superheroes. If there was more of that in the movie when it came to the Hamato's characterization, I feel like things kind of would have, went over well instead of it just kind of being glossed over in the first 20 minutes of the movie. Another one that I want to bring up is Raphael waiting at the door when Leo returns and he's talking to Master Splinter, and Master Splinter immediately knowing that Raphael is there. When it comes to this moment, I love this between Raphael and Master Splinter because one, in terms of Splinter's development and characterization, this just speaks tried and true to the fact that he is indeed a master in the art of ninjutsu, and it's a really hilarious, subtle take on a parent and child relationship because, of course, a parent is always going to have eyes in the back of their head and being like, I know what you're doing over there. And yeah, I just find that very cute and very funny in terms of the context of what's going on in that scene. Another hilarious moment is definitely when Mikey asks Donnie to build them jetpacks and Donatello says, I hardly trust you with a driver's license. Perfect comedic timing, great delivery from Mitchell Whitfield, pure comedy all around. Another one that I want to bring up off the top of my head is definitely when the Foot Clan come to counsel Max Winters when he summons them to basically do the job for him. And Winters says, if you're going to kill me, can we go ahead and move this fast? And I really just love the irony in this scene because, I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, Max Winters is Yaddle, the ancient warrior. He's immortal. And yeah, it's just one of these things where that's only something you're gonna pick up if you watch this movie multiple times over and then it finally clicks with you. It's just like, oh snap, like he's like being a sarcastic jackass right now because he knows that he couldn't die if Karai tried with all of her might, and I just find that kind of funny, and it also just adds something very interesting in terms of Max Winter's characterization. Another good Leonardo moment is when he has to put his personal emotions aside about how he's feeling about Raphael, and chooses to obey Splinter to go find Raph and bring the team together. And obviously this leads up to the Raph versus Leo fight scene, so it kind of gets lumped in and almost lost in the sauce, if you will. But when it comes to what this speaks to Leonardo in isolation, it really does show where his priorities lie, because he is the good son and he wants to be the good brother. And he's more so thinking about that when Splinter tells him to do this versus, when he's in leader mode and being like, all right, we don't even need Raph, let's just go ahead and get this done. And that really does speak to the fact that Leonardo does want to keep the family together, in spite of however his attitude and his mannerisms and his face may be saying otherwise. He's a good guy at the end of the day. And my final favorite moment is Casey Jones shoving Karai out of his way to kiss April at the end of the film. What can I say? I love love. I'm a sucker for a good love story, and I love it when we put April O'Neil and Casey Jones together in a Ninja Turtle story. And yeah, that's my whole shtick. Now, this next statement is not an original thought by any means, and I apologize now to the creator whose name I cannot remember that originally said this, but somebody brought up that this movie is at its highest potential when you already have an understanding of who the Ninja Turtles are and how they are supposed to act, and I 100% agree. I think that there was way too much time taken off between TMNT 3 and TMNT 2007 to call this a serviceable direct sequel. And that just has me really curious. To the people who saw this as kids in 2007, if this was your first ever exposure to anything Ninja Turtles related, what did you think about TMNT 2007? Did the story make sense to you? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I really want to see how accurate I am in my predictions and in my general assumptions about how people viewed this movie overall. And for now, I think that I've done enough dunking on this film's story, so let's go ahead and recap. All in all, I think on paper, this movie does nearly everything right. I love how they chose about going casting this movie. I love that they chose to make it an animated Ninja Turtles film, and I overall love the depictions with the exception of Karai and the Foot Clan. I think that there are things that are done really, really well in this movie and things that are really, really not. So, in the end, is TMNT 2007 an underrated movie? In my opinion, yes. Does this movie deserve more praise than what it gets and deserve to be considered one of the greatest Ninja Turtles movies of all time? In my opinion, no. TMNT 2007 is fine. It is a good animated movie, don't get me wrong, but it is not a great Ninja Turtle story. Every TMNT movie has its problems, but for me there are easily 7 other films in this franchise that do more of what the fans know, love, and come to expect when it comes to these characters. Yes, even Out of the Shadows. This movie has the same issue that so many other TMNT movies are victims of having, and that's when the turtles are on screen, everything is great, but when they're not, it falls flat. If you've ever read the original Mirage comics and understand how far out there the plots of these stories can get, you'll think this movie is doing nothing new or groundbreaking. If you grew up watching any of the cartoons, or hell, even the Next Mutation, you might at some point think to yourself, this isn't something I'd normally picture the Turtles doing. It can be underwhelming on 2 different fronts. Everything with the main villains, Max Winters, the Stone Generals, and the 13 Monsters, feels like it was ripped out of one of those generic fantasy books that you used to be able to buy from the Scholastic Book Fair. Are those still a thing? I digress. And instead of using your cliche Chosen One protagonist, they opted to Frankenstein this story into an underdeveloped Ninja Turtles universe. I'm glad that they gave it a shot at trying something new and original, but ultimately I think what's holding this movie back for me is that the tone overall is just a little too dark, and the stakes just aren't copacetic enough between the protagonist and the antagonist. I want to reiterate, yes, I like TMNT 2007, it just wouldn't be my first choice for a Ninja Turtles movie to show to someone that's never seen the Ninja Turtles before. However, to a certain extent, maybe that does work in this film's favor. Hear me out. I think that this movie is at its strongest when you view it as Ninja Turtles anthology. This film does a great job at getting an entry-level understanding to the main characters, personalities, and motivations. You can watch this movie, and yes, if you focus on the plot or how the story is sequenced, you're gonna feel like you're missing a little bit of context, but if you can appreciate good character moments for what they are as they are presented to you, there's so many gems in this movie. Like I said, great anthology. A story that you can apply to any Ninja Turtles universe at any given moment, including your own personal headcanons, and it'll make enough sense. There's a little bit of 03 in here, there's a little bit of the 90s films in here, there's a little bit of Mirage, and a lot of its own thing. All in all, yes, this movie is underrated. No, it is not the best Ninja Turtles movie by any means, at least is my personal opinion. And all in all, I think that that's okay. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for all of your support. Please don't forget to like and share this video. And I know that I've been pretty inconsistent on this platform specifically, and I'm planning on changing that by doing a series of video essays like this one for all 10 feature-length Ninja Turtles movies. So this is one of 10. Please leave a comment and let me know which one you want to see me talk about next. And until next time, this is Johnson signing off. You might not know me, but you will. Be good, do good, take care of yourselves, stay safe out there, and most importantly, stay lovely. Like the bells to L Rock. It doesn't matter whether or not you sell lots. You can find solace in the coldest cell block. This is Shell Shock. Welcome to Shell Shock. Ringing in your ears like the bells to L Rock. It doesn't matter whether or not